The first person who showed up was the one person I never expected to see there. Not my brother, not my mother, not even the friends who always said, "Call me if you need anything," like that sentence meant something once life actually tested it. No, the first person who pushed through the oncology waiting room doors with rain on her coat and a paper bag in her hand was Sophie Hart. And somehow that made the diagnosis feel real. 3 hours earlier, I had still been trying to convince myself it was something fixable, a blood issue, a bad scan, a mistake. Instead, I sat in a pale blue chair while a doctor with kind eyes explained that the biopsy had confirmed Hodgkin lymphoma. I don't remember much after that, just one word: cancer. That was all my brain kept. Her name was Sophie, and until that morning, she had mostly been the person who argued with me better than anyone else. We worked in the same building, different offices, same floor, same break room, same terrible coffee machine that started half our conversations. She was a litigation assistant. I worked in consulting. We met because the vending machine ate my card and I hit it too hard. She watched me do it and said, "That feels emotionally excessive for a granola bar." I told her the machine had started it. She told me I had the conflict resolution skills of a raccoon. That should have annoyed me. Instead, I laughed. After that, we kept running into each other. Coffee, elevators, lunch breaks, small arguments that somehow turned into the best part of my day. Sophie was sharp, quick, and impossible to fool. She noticed things too easily, especially things about me. Which became a problem when I started feeling sick. Not normal tired, wrong tired. The kind that made stares feel personal. Then came the swollen lymph nodes, the fever that wouldn't settle, the nights waking up soaked and angry at my own body for acting strange. I kept brushing it off. Sophie didn't. One morning in the break room, she looked at me and said, "You look awful." That is a terrible way to begin a conversation. You're pale, you're barely eating, and you just poured coffee grounds directly into the mug. I looked down. She was right. I'm fine. She leaned against the counter and stared at me until lying felt embarrassing. "No, you're not." By Friday, she had bullied me into seeing a doctor. That's not an exaggeration. She walked into my office, dropped a clinic address on my desk, and said, "Walk-in hours end at 6. You're going." I didn't ask for supervision. "You clearly need it." I went, mostly because arguing with her while half dead felt harder. Then came the blood work, the scans, the call asking me to come back, then the biopsy. And now this. After the doctor left, I sat there alone with a folder in my lap and texted the only words I could manage. "It's cancer." I sent it to Sophie before I even understood why. She replied in less than 10 seconds. "Which hospital?" I told her. Then I sat there trying not to think too far ahead. Treatment, hair loss, pain, fear. The way one sentence could suddenly split your life into before and after. By the time Sophie arrived, I was one bad thought away from falling apart in public. She crossed the room fast, stopped in front of me, and said, "Why are you here alone?" That question hit harder than the diagnosis. I looked away. "My mother didn't pick up. My brother's in court." Sophie's jaw tightened. Then she shoved the paper bag into my hands. "I brought coffee, which you probably shouldn't have, and a muffin you look too miserable to refuse." I stared at the bag, then at her. "You came." She looked at me like I'd said something stupid. "Obviously I came." That nearly broke me, because there she was, the girl who argued with me about coffee strength and bad movies and whether my gray jacket made me look emotionally unavailable, standing in front of me like none of this was optional. I laughed once, but it came out thin and shaky. Sophie heard it. Of course she did. Her face softened immediately, then she sat beside me and said, "Quieter now." "Okay, I start over." I looked at her. "I don't know how." "You don't have to do it well." So I told her, not gracefully, not all at once, just in pieces, what the doctor said, what treatment would probably look like, how next Thursday was my first chemo appointment. Sophie didn't interrupt to give me false comfort. She didn't say everything would be fine. She just listened. Then, when I finally ran out of words, she looked at the folder in my lap, looked back at me and asked, "Next Thursday?" I nodded. She nodded too, once like she'd already decided something. Then she said, calm as anything. Good, then I'm clearing my Thursdays. I frowned. For what? She held my gaze. For you. My throat tightened. Sophie. You don't have to say anything, she said softly. Just don't tell me no yet. And sitting there in that waiting room, yet with her shoulder brushing mine and the worst day of my life still unfolding around me, I realized something that scared me almost as much as the diagnosis itself. She was the first person who made me feel less alone. Chemo started the following Thursday. Sophie was there before I was. I got off the elevator and found her in the infusion waiting area with 2 drinks, a tote bag, and the kind of expression that said she had already decided I was not going through any of this alone, whether I liked it or not. You're early, I said. You're pale, she replied. So I guess we both prepared. That was how it began, not with some huge speech, not with a dramatic promise. Just Sophie showing up, then showing up again, and again. Every Thursday, she cleared her schedule. She brought books I was too tired to read, to crossword puzzles she claimed would prevent me from becoming medically boring, and tea strong enough to make the room smell less like antiseptic. On the worst days, she talked just enough to keep my brain from spiraling. On the better days, she argued with me about movies and office gossip like none of this had changed the basic shape of us. That mattered more than I knew how to explain. Because treatment did change things. It made times strange. Good days felt suspicious. Bad days lasted forever. Some weeks I could still work a little. Some weeks climbing the stairs to my apartment felt like a personal betrayal. I lost weight. Then my hair started going. Then came the nausea, the sleepless nights, the kind of exhaustion that made conversation feel expensive. And through all of it, Sophie kept arriving. Sometimes with tea. Sometimes with food I claimed I didn't want, and then ate anyway. Sometimes with absolutely no patience for self-pity. One Thursday around week 6, I snapped at her. Not because she'd done anything wrong, because I was tired and scared, and sick of being tired and scared. She had been talking to a nurse about my meds because I'd forgotten what day it was, and when she sat back down beside me, I said, "You don't have to manage me." The words landed harder than I meant them to. Sophie went still. Then she nodded once. Okay. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. It made me feel like the worst version of myself. I stared at the blanket over my knees and said, quieter, that came out wrong. She looked at me for a second, then leaned back in the chair. Do you want to know something annoying? Not especially. I'm still going to tell you. That got the smallest smile out of me. She kept her voice low. I know you're angry at the situation. I'm just not letting you aim it at yourself and call that independence. I looked over at her. She was tired too. I could see it then. Tired in the eyes, tired around the edges, but still there. Still choosing this. Why? I asked. Sophie frowned. Why what? Why are you still here? That question sat between us for a second, then she said very calmly, because I care about you enough that leaving was never actually an option. I swallowed. That sounds bigger than friendship. She held my gaze. It is. There it was. Simple. Clear. No performance around it. And maybe I should have said something beautiful back right then. But the truth was treatment had burned me down to the most honest parts of myself. So what came out was, I look terrible. Sophie's expression softened so fast it almost hurt. Then she said, you look like someone surviving something hard. She reached over and touched my hand once lightly. That does not make you less you. I laughed, but it came out shaky. That was disgustingly nice. I'm having a weak moment. Don't get used to it. I turned my hand and held hers. That was the beginning. Not the diagnosis, not the chemo. That. The day I stopped trying to act like I could keep her at a safe distance from what I felt. After that, things got harder before they got better. There was one weekend with a fever high enough to buy me 2 nights in the hospital. Sophie showed up with a charger, clean clothes, and the exact yogurt the nurse said I might tolerate. I told her she looked like she hadn't slept. She said, and yet I'm still the best-looking person in this room. I laughed for the first time in 2 days. A month later, I finished my last infusion. I expected to feel triumphant. Mostly, I felt wrung out and scared to hope too much. The scan came 2 weeks after that. Those 2 weeks lasted a year. Sophie pretended not to be nervous, which was ridiculous because I knew her too well by then. She cleaned my kitchen without asking, overwatered my plant out of stress, and started 3 separate arguments about baseball just to keep me from thinking. The morning of the results, she came with me again. Of course she did. We sat side by side in that same waiting room where she had first asked why I was alone. Only this time I wasn't. When the doctor walked in smiling, I knew before he spoke. Remission. That was the word this time. Not cancer, not treatment. Remission. I looked down because I didn't trust my face. Sophie grabbed my hand so hard it almost hurt, and I was never more grateful for pain in my life. Outside the hospital, I stopped on the sidewalk and just stood there like the world had become too light too quickly. Sophie turned to me. Hey, I looked at her. You're allowed to believe the good thing, she said softly. That nearly did me in. So I kissed her. Right there outside the hospital, with traffic behind us and spring sun on the pavement, and my whole future suddenly given back to me in one morning. When we pulled apart, she was smiling and crying at the same time, which she would later deny with real aggression. A year later, I was back at work. I'm back to arguing with her over bad coffee, back to pretending her color-coded pens were evidence of moral weakness. The difference was that now I got to walk her home after, kiss her at her door, and know that the hardest year of my life had also given me the clearest thing I'd ever felt. I survived. And somehow through all of it, the girl who always argued with me became the one person I never wanted to face anything without. If you were in my place, what would you have done when she kept showing up every Thursday? Tell me in the comments. And if you like this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.